bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, bum, 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 ba-da-dum, bum, 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 bum. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic sparkling day. Oh, I learned a little out of whack. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nut podcast number 1654. Today we're talking about business DNA. And I kind of got this idea from out of the air. But anyway, so the newsletter went out yesterday and it was all about DNA, finding the DNA for family, talking about family DNA and how to use DNA test results to find out your ethnicity and maybe planning trips to those countries so that you can learn more about the culture that is part of your heritage. And it also talked about how the strands tell their own story. And I thought that was kind of cool that we put that in there, that the strand... I seem to be missing something. Oh, no, we're all here. Sorry. I just had this sort of like feeling like I was missing something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, it was, so we talked about in the newsletter about DNA and the importance that in the part that it plays in our lives and how it has our strand of DNA has a very amazing story to tell us. Not only do you get things like your physical appearance that come through DNA, like the colors of your eyes, the color of your skin, hair color, all of that sort of stuff, and how it shows blood relations. Now, here's the thing when using it with genealogy is that DNA shows that you have a blood relationship with somebody, but genealogy shows you how you are related. Because the DNA will not show you, kind of to a degree it does, but then there's multiple things based on your centimorgans, which are these little number things. I'm still learning a lot about DNA when it comes to doing it with genealogy. It's been a while. It's been over a year since I did the class. That was really good. I'm actually going to do another class this July. I think it's July. I'm doing another class on DNA. But the centimorgans is the number of centimorgans you have in common with somebody else determines how close in relationship you are. The higher the centimorgans, the higher the relationship. So, are you siblings? I had one the other day where a client had centimorgans. The other person had high centimorgans as well, which meant that they could be half siblings. They could be aunt and niece. They could be, what was the other one? Half siblings, aunt and niece. No, siblings, aunt and niece, and there was another one. It wasn't first cousin, maybe first cousins. I was on the borderline of maybe being first cousins. So when you get there and see, like when I looked at my DNA results and my aunt was on there and she had her DNA results there, it had us listed as first cousins. And I was like, yeah, no. We'll just change that to aunt on the maternal side. So DNA tells us a lot, and traits can be passed down through DNA as well. So it could be that you are, what is flashing on my, I don't know, I've got something flashing on my screen here. Cancel, where's the cancel? There's the cancel button. Okay, we're good now. All right, got that one taken care of. Sorry, I just had something on my screen and I was like, don't like things that flash. We're going, wrong way, this one. My eyeliner got messed up somewhere along the way. Anyway, so even traits can be passed down. Are you in your DNA? It could be that you are a person of service, that you like to serve others in some capacity, whether it's volunteerism, through volunteer work, whether it is through the jobs that you do that are jobs that are service to others, like hospitality, teaching. That may be in your DNA as well. I have military in my background a lot. So that gets passed down, that actually gets passed down through generations. There are traits that can get passed down through generations. Why some people are wired to be able to perform, have the capacity to be able to perform certain tasks, where other people turn around and go, yeah, no. It's in their DNA. So DNA is important in our lives as far as who we are and some of the traits that we have, some of the appearance things that we have, even your metabolism is determined by your DNA. But then there's also another type of DNA too, which is your business DNA. There are certain things in your business, whatever it is, there are certain business practices that have to be done in any business that can help determine the success or the failure of your business. And so looking at the basic things, are you registered? Are you not registered? Do you need to be? Do you not need to be? What sort of accounting do you need to keep? All of those, you can call them like business DNA, everything that you do within your business. And some people will call them systems and processes. That's fine. I like to call it DNA because it kind of ties in with the family tree DNA. And there's certain things that you have to do, like filing taxes, the bane of most people's existence. What do they say? There's 3 things certain in life: death, change, and taxes. Go for it. So there's certain things and certain things that you have to do when you're in business, and then you can make up the rest of it along the way. But you've got that foundation, which is your strand of DNA, and then you can add to it and multiply it and all of that when you. Hang on, that thought just went completely out of my head. Where did it go? Didn't you see where it went? I didn't. It just went. Anyway, so things like setting up your accounting. So just basic stuff like getting your books sorted out so that you know what's coming in your business, what's going out, know your numbers. It is, how many, if you're in sales, how many sales calls are you making compared to how many sales are you closing? So it's keeping track of your numbers. If you are in, service products, how many products are you making? What is the cost per product to make it? What is the cost to market it? What is the cost to sell it? What is that product costing you to get it into somebody's hands? Are you making money that way? You've got your manufacturing costs, then you've got your marketing costs on top of that. You've got your shipping costs on top of that. That all gets built into the price, but are you pricing it where it is competitive, or are you pricing it out of the market? Or are you underpricing it based on what your numbers are? So you can have a business where you're sending out a lot of product, but are you actually making any money? It could be that you're sending out a lot of product, but you're not making a lot because your pricing may be a little skewed because you don't know your numbers very well. You just think, oh, that sounds like a good price. Yes, let's do that. And then the reality starts hitting when you start looking at the numbers. And there are people in business who just get into business and start doing stuff and make very good money at it. Totally get that. There are also people that get into business and struggle with it. And it turns out that a lot of times their basic DNA, their DNA foundation of business is not in place. How are you doing your marketing? Are you targeting the right people? So today, are you targeting the right market for your thing, for your object? Is it something that would appeal to somebody who is in their 20s, or is it something that would more appeal to somebody who is in their 40s? And are you targeting them in your marketing? So you got to know your numbers. And I know no numbers. I am changing my attitude. I love my numbers. I love my numbers. And I am grateful that I have my numbers, because then my numbers tell me how I am doing. And whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. I love the fact that I am able to tell exactly where I am in my business based on my numbers. You really, really, really have to know your numbers. And there was one year, it was 2016. And this is when I was very heavily involved with selling cruises. I still sell cruises, just more destination of New Zealand, Australia, and South Pacific. But when I was very heavily into doing cruising at the time, before I started my genealogy business, and I was looking at my numbers, and I thought, well, I've got this year's numbers that are dollars that are let's rewind that. This mouth ain't working right today. This seems to be working really good. It's just a disconnect between here and what's coming out here. So let's try this again. All right. So how I work my numbers in 2016 is I would look at the total sales, but some of those sales were advanced sales into 2017, and some of them were sales within the current year. So I would look at my numbers based on the departure dates. Were they departing in the current year, or were they departing in 2017? And so I went and I looked at my numbers in 2016, and I thought, wow, okay, it's looking like a pretty good year. It's more than I made. I've got more on the books than I had last year at that time. And I thought, this is pretty. So you've got to look at the previous year as well. So I looked at what the previous year's total departure sales were. It didn't matter if it had been sold in 2014, 15, whenever. It's what's the dollar value that is departing in that current year and what's advanced sales. And I looked at my previous year to see where I was with 2015 compared to 2016, and I was ahead in 2016. I thought, this is pretty cool. So I looked at my 2017 numbers, and they were almost at my 2016 numbers. And I thought, this is really, really cool because that's advanced sales. And I thought, I wonder if, and because it's halfway through the year, the first half of the year, I tend to sell into that year. This is how my business worked. This was the DNA of my business. First half of the year, I'm selling into the current year with a few sprinkled into the following year. The second half of the year is more heavily in sales to the following year. I still have sales for that current year, but I had heavily into the following year. And I thought, well, I'm halfway through the year. My 2017 numbers are almost the same as my 2016 numbers. There was just a little bit, 2016 was here, 2017 was here. And I thought, what if I changed how I did my marketing and started really pushing for 2017? I wonder if I could get the advanced sales doubled over what I did in total in 2016. So when I started 2017, I would already be doubled the numbers on 2016 for departures. And I thought, why not give it a go? So I did. And I kept working at it, but I started watching the numbers to make sure I was on track. But I had to remember, for every dollar I sold into 2016 for departure in 2016, I had to sell $2 for departures into 2017. So I didn't have a set number to go after. All I had was, for every dollar I sell for departure in 2016, I got to sell $2 for departure in 2017 to try and keep it up. Well, actually, I had to sell a little bit more because I had to make up that little bit of difference that there was and then exceed it. And so I started working on it, and then I started losing track of my numbers. Because I was so focused on what I was doing, I kept forgetting to look at my numbers. We got to December 31st and closed the business, looked at the numbers. I was $10,000 off, doubling my 2017 numbers over departure sales over the 2016 departures. And I was at first I went, oh, I just missed it. But then I was sort of like, no, hang on. I have basically almost doubled my business going into 2017. And I've got a whole year to sell into 2000. I've still got the first 6 months where I sell heavily into 2017. And I thought, this is going to be awesome because it is going to be so much more than what it was in 2016. And so, of course, we started selling in 2017, and that first half of the year, selling into the later half of the year. We had a couple of sales that went into 2018. And then in June, disaster struck when my husband got admitted into hospital, and he was there for 87 days. And I was literally sitting at his bed. So the only time I went home was in the evenings to walk the dog, feed the dog, get some sleep. And then I was back up the next morning, walk the dog, feed the dog, have breakfast. And then I was at the hospital for the day. We did that for 87 days before my husband came home. He was home for 5 days before he passed away. By the time he got home, our dog had already passed. The dog passed 18 days before he did. And that was September. I did no work for the rest of the year. Yet in business, my business for 2017 was my best year in business. And I am thankful and grateful for the fact that I took time to get to know my numbers, that I was able to start selling heavily into 2017, so that we have, as a travel professional, the travel industry doesn't pay you until the clients travel. So you don't get your commission from the cruise lines, the airlines, the hotels, or anything until the people travel. So we had that income coming in that year. So that was pretty good. But 2018 was off to a rocky start. And then beginning of 2019, I was looking at things, and I was writing in my journal. And you can do this thing that's called unconscious writing. And it's just where you just sit there and you just let the pen do whatever the pen wants, whatever thought wants to come out of the end of the pen just comes out and it just flows. And it was January 2019. And I was sitting there and I was just doing this unconscious writing. And out of the end of the pen came, what if I gave up the travel business? That pen went flying across the room along with some choice words. And it literally scared the crap out of me. And I was just like, no, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so I called up my accountability coach, and I said to her, this is what's just happened. And she told me to get on the phone with my mentor and immediately. And I knew he was traveling that day. So I sent him a text message because I didn't know if he was flying, if he was between flights. I didn't know. So I sent him a text message and said, we need to talk immediately. This is what's happened. And he had happened to just gotten off the plane when he got my text message. And so he called me straight away. I explained to him what had happened. And he says, right, let me ask you a question. And he says, I want an immediate response. I don't even want you to think about it. He says, I want gut reaction to this. And I'm like, okay. And he said, if travel, remember this is January 2019, if travel was to go away tomorrow, what would you do? I went, genealogy. He's like, really? I went, yeah. He didn't know that I'd had a lifelong passion for genealogy. And he's sort of like, okay, your next step is find out what it's going to take for you to hang your shingle for genealogy. What training do you need to do? What marketing do you need to do? What is your target market? Everything. He says, and we need to start networking in that. And he says, I want you to start planning to start a genealogy business. And I was like, okay. He says, just go see what qualifications you need and all of that and start doing the research on it. I'm like, okay. Well, then, of course, a year later, I'm driving down the road and I had this group that was due to go out on March 9th. March 9th, 2020, there was a group that was supposed to go. March 6th, they canceled the entire group cruise, got canceled. And all because of all the stuff that was floating around in the media about COVID and all this sort of stuff. And I'm just like, you would have been fine. I was on the I-10 driving from California to Florida at the time. I had left the beginning of February, so I wasn't far away from getting into Florida. In fact, I think I arrived Florida. Actually, I did arrive in Florida on the 9th of March, the day I was supposed to get on the cruise ship. I think it was the 9th of March. Yeah, 9th of March is when I arrived in Florida. Nobody was in lockdown at that point. Well, some states were already in lockdown, but most of them weren't at that point. And it was 3 weeks later that Florida went into lockdown, and I got stuck in Florida for 9 weeks. But driving along, and I'm suddenly sitting there and I'm thinking, okay. And then I suddenly thought, it suddenly dawned on me that, oh my gosh. And I suddenly remember, I hadn't been looking at my numbers, and I suddenly realized that you've got a lot of time to think when you're driving. I suddenly realized that, oh, if that group cancels, I have nothing on the books for travel this year. And then I was like, but then I don't have to worry about any cancellations except with the group that had just canceled. They canceled on Friday, the 6th of March. And so I suddenly thought, well, I've got no groups after this. Is this the time that I close my business? And I was this sort of thought through, and I was like, no, we'll leave it open for now and just see what happens. And, it's just probably, by the end of the year, we can pick this back up again and everything else. And so that was my thought process going through this. Well, out of the cabins that were due to go on this cruise on the 9th of March, one cabin did not cancel, and they went and had a blast. They came home, they were fine, went back home. They'd had a great cruise and everything else. And they had decided to ignore all the media hoopla that was going on at the time. And, but they went and had a great time. And I remember thinking, hang on, they're coming on. My group was supposed to, I had my business mentor was on a cruise at the time, and he was actually disembarking the day that my group was getting on the same ship. And so I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So he disembarked, and of course all this hoopla stuff's going on and everything else. And it was, and then I went to one place in Orlando, and I wanted to stay another week at that property. And they says, no, you can't do it. With the membership that I had, they says, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, do you have any other places that are close by that I can go to? And they said, yeah, we've got this park down here. And so I went down to Thousand Trails in Orlando, which is kind of behind Disney World down there, and ended up staying there for six weeks. I think we were there because I had my first I was coming to the end of my first 2 weeks there, and I called up the office and says, look, I want to take my 3rd week option. Is that okay if I extend another week? And they're like, oh, we'll call you back tomorrow. We're taking all the requests for extensions. We'll call you back tomorrow. I'm like, okay. And so they called me back the next day and said, last night the governor put us in lockdown. So you're here till at least this date. We've extended your stay to the end of April. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that was a 7-week stay at that particular park. And then the 1st of May was due to leave. And I'd heard through the rumor tree around the campground. And I'll tell you this 6-foot thing, the 6 days, 6 feet apart, it was interesting that even though the campground had cancelled all activities, we campers found ways to do this. You'd go walking, Zephy and I would go walking at night, and in the big parking area out front of the community center, they would be doing line dancing, and everybody was 6 feet apart, and somebody had a stool there of some sort, and they had an iPhone playing the music. And the people were standing there line dancing, and everybody else was standing around watching them. It was awesome. And some people were standing 6 feet apart, some weren't, but all the line dancers were 6 feet apart. It was kind of humorous about how they were dealing with it and that sort of thing. And but yeah, so while I was at that park, it was April 22nd is when I started. So that was a Wednesday. 21-20 was Monday. So April the 18th, I had my mastermind workshop was on, and we were all virtual, doing it on Zoom. And so I got challenged because, we're talking about the travel industry. It wasn't existent at that time. They didn't know when it was going to be back. The cruise lines kept thinking about when it was going to be back. So they're pushing passengers to there. They're making bookings from this particular date onwards. And it came up about my genealogy thing. And so I got asked to do a dirty launch. And I'm like, well, what's a dirty launch? And one of the coaches turned around and says, all you need to do is create a Google form with what questions you would ask a potential client for genealogy and launch it. And he says, don't worry about a website, don't worry about a domain name, don't worry about anything, just launch it with a Google form. And he says, do you think you can have that done by Friday? And I went, yeah, I can get that done by Friday. And so I was like, okay. I said, challenge accepted. So Wednesday, which was the 23rd of April, I think it was the 23rd, 22nd, 23rd, so one of those 2 dates, I launched my business with a Google form. I kind of came up with a name which ended up sticking, which is Your Family Tree Detective. So Wednesday, I launched my business with a Google form. The next day, I got my first client. And on Friday, the website was launched, the domain name was purchased, the website was up and running, everything was in place, except I didn't have it as a business entity at the time. And and I didn't have a logo. I didn't get logo until December of that year. I didn't start the business entity until last year. Took me a couple of years. So, there's certain things that you have to do to get a business in place. And sometimes you don't have to. It depends on the business. And, my genealogy business has been going strong since, and now travel's coming back. And I'm like, I'm revamping my travel business. We're not just going to do cruises. We will do them to certain areas. We'll do group cruises instead. We're not going to do the onesie twosies. We're going to do the groups. And then, for my destinations, I'm going to concentrate on New Zealand, Australia, and the South Pacific for individualized, customized trips down there, maybe even for retreats, because there's some amazing places down there to have retreats. And so that's basically what I've done. And you're probably going, well, what's this going to do with business DNA? Depending what business you're starting, some you can do as a dirty launch where you just have a Google form. Some of them requires a little more thought put into it and a little more preparation. It depends on your business as to what you are starting. Some can be like, some of you may be great writers and you really like doing copywriting, and you just hang your shingle and away you go. You come up with a business name and have a Google form and you're off and running. So it depends on your business, but there are still things that you have to put in place afterwards. Like I had to figure out how was I going to track my expenses? How was I going to track the money coming in? So I had to figure, my accounting system. I had to figure out my bookkeeping system, which is part of the business DNA. And then, of course, taxes roll around, and it's sort of like, oh, crap, we're going to do the taxes. Yes, we're going to do the taxes. So now I am getting prepared to do taxes for last year, and I'm sort of like, okay, we really hate doing taxes, but we're changing our mindset. And mindset is a big part of business DNA. Because your mindset will determine how your business is going to go. And because if you don't have the right mindset, you can have all the techniques in the world you want, but if you don't have the right mindset, not much is going to happen. And so it's been an interesting journey since I launched the genealogy business, and with travel coming back again, it's all been an interesting journey, and I have loved every minute of it. And, I'm coming up to doing taxes and stuff, and I'm like, but now I'm sort of like turning that around and going, I love doing my taxes. I am really good at doing my taxes. and my taxes are going to be easy breezy, and I may even get a refund this year. I don't know. I'm speaking into existence. I'm getting a refund for my taxes this year. So we'll see what happens, but it's all about the mindset. You got to have the mindset. And then you got to have the right tools for your business as well. But that's another conversation. Although I will tell you, I got exposed to some really cool tools today. We had our mastermind meeting, our mastermind training today, and mind blowing. And I was there, and I said to, and I know I didn't say that. They introduced and they kind of talked about this tool and what it's capable of, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be a huge game changer. But I don't know enough about it to share it right now. We're actually going to do, they're going to walk us through the system. They've got somebody who's proficient in the system who is going to walk us through the system. And I thought at that point, then I will go into it and play. But the way I learn, I'm kinesthetic, the way I learn is show me, watch me do, then let me play. And yes, I probably could go in and play right now, but I have so much on my plate right now that I am like, I need to put that on the back burner until I know more about the system so I can get this other stuff over here off my plate, and then I can push this back on my plate and we're good to go. So, look at your business. What does it take for your business to get up and running? If you are in business for yourself, check, find a checklist somewhere. Think about things. Are you tracking your numbers? Do you know what your numbers are? Do you know what what you've got coming in sales? Do you know what you've got going out in expenses? Compare the two. Where do you need to make adjustments so that you've got less expenses going out and more income coming in? Make your adjustments. If you're doing products, what's it costing you for the products? The manufacturing, the shipping, all of that sort of stuff that goes with that. If you're doing services, I think are the easiest thing to do because you're the one that's running the show. Like if, I do genealogy for people. What does it cost me to do genealogy? Well, it costs me time. So what am I worth on my time? And there's my, what's my time worth to go and research for somebody? What tools do I need to use or have access to? Because there are subscriptions that I do have that I make sure get paid every single year. So that I can keep the tools that I have to be able to do the research that I do. So it's looking at what expenses do I have on a yearly basis, and do I have the money coming in to cover those expenses? And if it gets really tight, am I going to keep those services or not? And that's not even a question. I don't even ask the question. I will find a way to make the money to pay the subscriptions that I need to pay. And I pay out a bit in subscriptions because the services that I use for researching in genealogy. It's, it shocked me the other day when I was looking at my numbers going, did I really spend that last year on subscription? Yep, you did. Ooh. Do I really use these tools? Yep, I do. So going through and looking at what is it that I use? What am I paying for? What do I actually use out of what I'm paying for? And is it worth keeping the cost going? So there's all sorts of things that you can look at. So what is your business DNA? Everybody has a business DNA. What is your business DNA? What is it that you need to be doing to make sure you can track your numbers? What is it that you need to be doing to know what products you've got on the shelf? What is it costing you to keep those products on the shelf? What does it cost you to market those products? What does it cost you to manufacture those products, to acquire those products? When it comes to services, what services are you offering? And are there certain software programs and that are out there that you need to have in order to help you with your business? So that's it from me. That's it from me. I'm out of here. I gotta go have dinner. I haven't had dinner yet. We've been for a nice walk. It was very cold out for it. It was 59 degrees, but there was a cold wind out there blowing, and it was going through. It was one of those cold winds that go through to the bones. And those that live in the cold areas know exactly what I'm talking about. It's got that wind chill factor. It had a wind chill factor to it, and I have no idea what the wind chill factor was, but it was cold. Anyway, go out and have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys tomorrow evening. At 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, konera. Oh, and for those of you who like watching Super Bowl, enjoy the game. I hope it is a really cool game. I hope that it's close. I will not be watching it. But I know there are people out there that have to sit down and do their Super Bowl and watch it and all that sort of stuff, and totally in alignment with that. If I have to sit and watch a Super Bowl game, I will be sitting there reading or knitting, crocheting, and whatever. But anyway, I'm not watching the Super Bowl tomorrow, but I do have other things that I plan to do for my rest and relaxation day and my unplugged day. The only time I will be on the computer tomorrow is for this live. So go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Hei konera.